Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that society has quietly convinced you that your desires, your pleasures, your very curiosity about your body should have faded with age. That your 60s and 70s are only meant for quiet resignation, fatigue, and routine. But what if that was a lie? A story told for decades to keep men silent, distant, disconnected from themselves? This is the hidden truth about older men and their bodies, a truth buried beneath embarrassment and cultural expectations. Many have been told, from youth, that desire withers over time, that the body loses its right to enjoyment, and that the only path is to accept limitations. But the reality is completely different. I've witnessed sharp, spirited men like Mr. Harold, 68, and Mr. Leonard, 72, vibrant in mind and experience, slowly losing their vitality, not because of illness, but because they stopped listening to their own bodies, dismissing sexual health as trivial, when in fact it is as essential as eating well, walking daily, or keeping the heart strong. Too often, the medical world avoids these conversations, shying away from the topic out of habit or modesty, leaving men without guidance that could dramatically improve their quality of life. And so, countless men sail through their later years burdened by fatigue, restlessness, insomnia, or a fading sense of purpose, unaware that the root of it all may be something surprisingly simple, neglecting their own sexual vitality. Masturbation, intimacy, sexual self-care, these subjects remain taboo, even in clinics. Patients like 66-year-old Mr. Simon avert their gaze, change the topic, or laugh awkwardly, yet biology does not retire. Hormones, mental balance, and prostate health continue to rely on the same principle. Sexual expression, whether shared or solo, sustains the body's energy, fuels the mind, and nurtures emotional stability. Ignoring it is like shutting down a generator of life itself. The real struggle is not medical, but cultural. Many men were raised to equate masculinity with strength, productivity, and resilience, not self-connection or emotional awareness, leaving them puzzled, even ashamed, when their bodies still crave touch, intimacy, and tenderness. Pleasure does not vanish with age, it transforms, becoming slower, more intentional, more profound. The tragedy is that no one ever teaches how to embrace this new, wiser stage of the body. That is why this conversation must be different. It is not about morality, shame, or judgment, but about science, health, and humanity. The sexual lives of older men are largely unexplored, misunderstood, and undervalued, yet they hold immense potential for joy, energy, and renewed purpose. Men like 70-year-old Mr. Frederick and 65-year-old Mr. Thomas rediscovered themselves, reigniting vitality and confidence simply by reconnecting with their bodies, honoring desire, and embracing pleasure without guilt. Medical traditions have long ignored this reality, teaching that sexuality is a youth-only affair. Curriculums focus on cholesterol, blood pressure, diabetes, but rarely, if ever, on desire, intimacy, or the essential role of self-stimulation in hormonal, mental, and emotional health. Yet science is clear. Maintaining sexual activity, even through masturbation, supports circulation, boosts immunity, stabilizes mood, and wards off depression. So why do we persist in ignoring it? Often it is modesty, cultural discomfort, or habit. Many doctors carry the same outdated beliefs as their patients, hesitant to discuss pleasure, fearing offense, or simply pressed for time, prioritizing visible clinical symptoms over deeper human needs. But the body does not separate the physical from the emotional. They are inseparable. When a 71-year-old patient mentions sleepless nights, frequent urination, or fading motivation, the easy solution is medication. The hard, courageous path is to ask, when did you last feel genuine pleasure, joy, or intimate connection? I've seen well-meaning colleagues, eager to help, suggest vitamins, supplements, or exercises, yet completely miss the point because what's missing isn't in the muscles, isn't in the diet, it's in the connection with one's own body, in the awareness of what it truly needs. Modern medicine, despite its incredible technological advances, has often overlooked the transformative power of intimacy, human touch, and self-understanding, and this neglect weighs heavily on older men, who already carry the silent burden that their emotional and sexual needs must be hidden, suppressed, or ignored. In my experience, the moment a patient like Mr. Leonard, 72, or Mr. Harold, 68, finally dares to speak about their intimate life, something subtle yet profound shifts. The consultation changes from a checklist of symptoms into a genuine conversation, a human connection, a space where men realize they are not alone, not broken, not failures, but simply men who have been misled by myths and silence. That is the instant where true treatment begins, because healing extends beyond organs, beyond tests, beyond prescriptions. It is about rekindling vitality, restoring a sense of wholeness, and honoring one's body. I recall an older colleague, a doctor himself, who once admitted quietly, "I avoid this topic with my patients because I don't know how to approach it without crossing a line." And in that, I understood that silence is often insecurity, not neglect, that medical training rarely prepares anyone to speak about pleasure naturally, and that every unspoken question, every avoided topic, can leave a man alone, thinking his body is useless, unworthy, or done with desire. This is why the change must start with those who guide care, because normalizing these conversations is the only way men can reclaim sexual health as it should be seen, a vital part of overall well-being. Speaking about sexuality after 60 should never have to feel like courage, yet society has made it so, associating desire almost exclusively with youth, leaving older men confused when their bodies still seek intimacy, tenderness, and presence. At this stage, pleasure transforms. It is no longer measured by potency, performance, or frequency, but by connection, awareness, and the ability to experience sensation fully, without fear or shame. Many men enter the consultation convinced their sexual life ended with retirement or a first prostate diagnosis, but what truly ended was the limited idea they had of themselves. Reframing sexuality means accepting bodily changes, new textures of skin, different patterns of response, and realizing that these shifts do not diminish masculinity, but expand it, offering a deeper, more conscious form of pleasure unhurried, intentional, liberated from expectation. I have witnessed men, after decades of silence, rediscover a vibrant, alive connection with their bodies, beginning with small gestures, holding hands, speaking openly with a partner, exploring themselves without shame. Understanding that self-awareness and self-care are acts of courage and health. And as they embrace this, everything changes. Energy returns, sleep improves, and above all, they feel fully present in their own skin once again, alive, alert, and deeply human. Redefining sexuality after 60 means breaking free from the invisible rules society has long imposed on older men, the unspoken scripts dictating how they should behave, what they should desire, and how they should feel. For decades, virility has been measured in performance, in frequency, in outward proof, yet that belongs to a different chapter of life. At 60, 70, even 80, desire appears differently. It whispers in intimate conversations, lingers in a slow, deliberate caress, or radiates from simply feeling wanted, seen, or cherished. Excitement evolves, becoming more mental, more emotional, more profound, and it demands patience, calm, and openness to experience it fully. One patient, Mr. Leonard, 72, once told me something I will never forget. "I no longer aim to prove anything. Now I just want to feel." Those words capture the essence of this stage perfectly. The body ages, yes, but it grows wiser, learning to listen, to notice subtlety, to savor pleasure without pressure or expectation. True mature sexuality is measured not by intensity, but by authenticity, and when a man reaches this understanding, he restores not only his sexual health, but his emotional balance, his self-worth, and his sense of being fully alive. This is why speaking about sexuality in later life is far from frivolous. It is a matter of health, of dignity, and of reclaiming purpose. Each time a man reconnects with his capacity to feel, he regains a fragment of his identity, whether alone or with a partner, because what truly matters is honoring the right to feel alive, to embrace vitality, to accept pleasure as part of life itself. For centuries, society has insisted that with age, men should withdraw from desire, that sexual activity becomes inappropriate or irrelevant, embedding guilt, shame, and fear into the male's psyche, convincing countless men that continued desire is immoral, childish, or shameful. Many surrender to the myth of desexualization, equating aging with the loss of the right to pleasure, when in fact sexuality matures, transforms, and deepens with time, revealing new richness. This forced withdrawal affects far more than sexual activity. It erodes self-esteem, distorts identity, and drives men to conceal desires even from those closest to them. The cycle becomes self-reinforcing. Repressing sexuality strengthens the cultural myth that old age equals impotence, which in turn saps motivation to care for the body, the mind, and the heart, leaving a man incomplete, withdrawn, and disconnected from himself. Understanding that sexuality has no expiration date is crucial. It changes, it evolves, but it does not vanish. Older men who challenge the notion of withdrawal discover intimacy and pleasure anew, not measured by frequency or speed, but by the depth and quality of experience, shifting focus from performance to tenderness, from outward validation to inner fulfillment. In my practice, many men, like Mr. Harold, 68, admit they have spent years repressing desire, believing it inappropriate or unnecessary, and this self-denial fuels frustration, anxiety, and sometimes depression. Yet those who reclaim their right to pleasure find profound improvements in energy, emotional resilience, and harmony with their own bodies. They realize that pleasure is not a luxury. It is a right, a fundamental pillar of physical, mental, and emotional health, and to deny it is to deny a part of one's very self. Finally, realizing that retirement or advancing age does not mean surrendering to the idea of pleasure requires a profound personal and cultural shift, a willingness to challenge stereotypes and embrace life fully, where desire, intimacy, and enjoyment remain vital sources of satisfaction and meaning. Retreating from pleasure is a mistake rooted in ignorance and societal pressure, and breaking free from it demands courage, guidance, and the commitment to reconnect with one's own body, without shame, without guilt, with curiosity and respect. By doing so, a man discovers that sexual fulfillment in later life is not only possible, but can be deeper, more mindful, and more gratifying than at any earlier stage. Take, for example, Mr. Edward, a 71-year-old man who represents many older men living with uncertainty and fear about their prostate and sexual health. For years, he believed the myths that the prostate shuts down with age, that urinary or sexual problems were inevitable signs of irreversible decline. Yet Mr. Edward's journey defies these fears. He discovered that his prostate remained active and that with informed care and conscious attention, he could maintain sexual and urinary function differently than in youth, but fully, realistically, and confidently. His experience proves that aging does not automatically erase abilities. It transforms them, requiring knowledge, preparation, and deliberate care. Mr. Edwards' story illustrates how men can continue to enjoy sexual life after 60, as long as they understand their bodies and adopt habits that support prostate health. Education is crucial. Knowing that the prostate does not suddenly switch off dispels anxieties, corrects misconceptions, and empowers men to take control of their health. Through regular checkups, pelvic floor exercises, and mindful nutrition, Mr. Edward preserved not only satisfactory sexual function, but also urinary well-being, showing that an active prostate is not an exception, but a realistic possibility for men who take responsibility for themselves. Beyond the physical, the emotional impact is profound. Rediscovering confidence in his body reignited his desire, restored intimacy with his partner, and erased the sense of impotence that so many men feel as they age. His story demonstrates that mature sexuality is not defined by intensity or frequency, but by the ability to experience pleasure consciously, to connect emotionally, and to savor intimacy deeply. Mr. Edwards' journey also highlights the need for lifelong male sexual education. A lack of clear, reliable information about the prostate fosters unfounded fears and premature resignation. By seeking knowledge and professional guidance, he could make informed decisions, maintain his health, and sustain sexual vitality. Ultimately, Mr. Edwards' active prostate reminds us that aging does not equal decline, inactivity, or loss of rights over one's own body. It represents an opportunity to explore new forms of intimacy, adapt care, and experience sexuality with awareness, pleasure, and joy. His story proves that with knowledge, attention, and a positive mindset, men can maintain sexual function, defy cultural myths, and continue to experience pleasure and vitality well into their later year. Ejaculation is far more than a simple physical act. It is a complex interplay of neurological signals, hormones, and muscular coordination. And understanding its mechanisms is essential to dispelling the fears and misconceptions that cloud male sexuality in later life. Contrary to popular myths, ejaculation is not an isolated moment, but the culmination of intricate cooperation between the nervous system, the endocrine system, and the pelvic floor muscles. During arousal, nerve impulses trigger the release of semen from the prostate and seminal vesicles, while the pelvic muscles generate the force necessary for expulsion. Each element has a precise role, and any disruption along this chain can influence not only the mechanics of ejaculation, but also the perception of pleasure itself. Choosing to pause ejaculation, whether consciously or due to physiological changes, produces effects both immediately and over time. The body continues to produce sperm and prostatic fluids, and if these are not regularly expelled, mild discomfort, pelvic pressure, or sensations of congestion may arise. Yet, it is vital to recognize that halting ejaculation does not damage virility, diminish masculinity, or cause harm, contrary to persistent cultural myths. In fact, controlled pauses can be therapeutic, offering a chance to explore new forms of intimacy, strengthen the pelvic floor, and heighten body awareness, allowing older men to reclaim their sexual vitality with greater control and understanding. The experience of ejaculation is also intimately tied to hormonal health. Testosterone, the primary male hormone, governs sperm production, libido, and pelvic muscle function during ejaculation. With age, testosterone levels naturally decline, altering frequency, intensity, and ease of release, yet understanding these changes helps normalize the variations in sexual response, relieving guilt, frustration, and anxiety. This awareness enables men to focus on the richness of pleasure and emotional connection, rather than speed, quantity, or performance. Learning to manage ejaculation can also reshape orgasm and arousal, as many men discover that delaying release enhances intensity, strengthens pelvic muscles, and contributes to overall sexual endurance and a sense of vitality. These benefits extend beyond sexuality, improving circulation, supporting prostate health, and reinforcing the connection between ejaculation and holistic well-being, showing that vitality can be consciously guided and maintained. Ultimately, knowing how ejaculation works and what occurs when it is paused empowers older men to approach sexuality with realism, confidence, and informed decision-making. They can adapt to natural changes, practice control techniques, and continue to experience pleasure fully, consciously, and healthily, reinforcing both body and mind. Over recent decades, science has increasingly recognized the critical link between sexuality, aging, and overall men's health. Once a taboo subject, sexual activity is now understood as central to physical and emotional wellness. Numerous studies demonstrate that maintaining sexual activity, even through self-stimulation, supports hormonal balance, strengthens immunity, and prevents conditions such as depression and anxiety in later life. Research at the University of California, for instance, shows that older men who regularly engage in self-stimulation maintain steadier testosterone levels and experience significantly lower rates of chronic insomnia, proving that conscious attention to sexual health has profound, lasting effect. Scientific research increasingly confirms that sexuality in later life is not only possible, but essential for preserving cognitive vitality. A representative study conducted by the National Institute of Neurosciences in Mexico found that men over 65 who maintained sexual activity, whether with partners or through self-exploration, demonstrated stronger short-term memory and sharper concentration. Researchers suggest that the dopamine released during sexual pleasure acts as a natural stimulant for the central nervous system, enhancing neural circuits involved in learning and focus. This reinforces the idea that sexuality is not just a physical act, but a biological engine of mental energy, a secret source of cognitive resilience that continues to fuel life well into later decades. Prostate health is another critical area illuminated by science. Data from the Comprehensive Urology Center of Buenos Aires show that men who ejaculate regularly face a lower risk of chronic inflammation or prostate congestion. Ejaculation clears the prostate of accumulated secretions, promotes circulation, and reduces the likelihood of infection. Masturbation, far from being trivial or shameful, is revealed as a physiological exercise vital for maintaining reproductive and urinary health and directly contradicting cultural myths that frame pleasure as weakness or sin. Emotional and social benefits are equally significant. Studies at the Autonomous University of Barcelona indicate that men who maintain self-exploration report higher self-esteem, improved stress management, and a more positive outlook on life. Physical contact with one's own body stimulates endorphins and oxytocin, hormones essential for emotional well-being, which explains why men, even without changing their daily routines, experience calm, renewed confidence, and optimism when they reconnect with their intimate selves. Taken together, recent scientific evidence echoes what clinical experience has long suggested. Sexuality in old age is not only possible, it is necessary, it is vital. Maintaining an active connection with the body through pleasure and self-stimulation strengthens the physical, mental, and emotional health of older men. These insights challenge outdated medical paradigms, long indifferent to the role of sexuality in overall well-being. Science now affirms what experience shows. Desire does not vanish with age. It must be acknowledged, respected, and approached with understanding. Throughout life, men receive conflicting messages about sexuality, especially in later decades. Strict interpretations of religious or cultural teachings often suggest that sexual desire in older age is improper or sinful, fostering guilt, shame, and self-censorship. These messages have seeded myths that distort men's perception of their bodies. Some feel that enjoying sexual pleasure past 60 is childish, while others hide their desires entirely, isolating emotionally, disconnecting from vitality, and losing touch with natural rhythms of pleasure. Overcoming these conflicts requires a deep, honest reconciliation with one's own body, a recognition that sexuality is an intrinsic part of human life, fully compatible with age, spirituality, and self-respect. Experts in psychology and sexology emphasize that embracing bodily changes in maturity restores self-esteem and authenticity, helping men reconnect with their core identity. Continuous sexual education, conscious reflection, and the courage to challenge inherited myths are essential tools to reclaim pleasure, honor personal values, and maintain holistic physical, mental, and emotional well-being well into the later years. Research from multiple contexts demonstrates that men who have reconciled their sexuality with their spiritual or religious beliefs experience higher levels of satisfaction, emotional calm, and inner peace. This reconciliation does not require abandoning values or faith, but rather embracing sexuality as a natural, legitimate, and vital expression of life itself. Evidence shows that men who achieve this balance experience less anxiety, stronger relationships, and a deeper sense of fulfillment. Accepting sexuality is not only an internal act, it is a gesture of respect for one's own body, a recognition of the vital energy that accompanies maturity and can be consciously harnessed to enrich every aspect of life. Breaking the myths also demands challenging the long-standing cultural idea that desire and aging are incompatible. For centuries, society has insisted that maturity equals renunciation, portraying sexuality as a privilege reserved for youth. This narrow perception has rendered the experiences of older men invisible, fostering isolation, frustration, and in some cases health issues stemming from suppressed desire. Reconciliation means accepting that pleasure has no expiration date, that it is a human right, and that spirituality, ethics, and sexual expression can coexist harmoniously, each enriching the other. Addressing these religious and cultural conflicts allows men to reclaim a healthy dialogue with their own bodies and emotions. Dispelling myths does not require challenging faith, but rather reinterpreting teachings to include sexuality as a natural, respected, and conscious dimension of life. This internal harmony opens the door to a fully aware sexual life, strengthening physical and emotional health, fostering self-esteem, and restoring to men the dignity of seeing themselves as complete, vital beings, capable of enjoying their sexuality even in later decades. Mr. Julian, 68, exemplifies this journey. Always curious and intellectually engaged, he began noticing subtle lapses in memory and slight difficulties concentrating, particularly when it came to matters of sexual life. He sometimes forgot recent conversations or felt his reaction times were slower than before. Initially, he assumed this was an unavoidable part of aging, something everyone had to accept, but he soon recognized a deeper issue demanding attention. The interplay between hormones, brain function, and sexual activity became central to understanding his experience. Medical guidance revealed that testosterone and other sex hormones not only regulate libido, but also directly influence cognitive function. Testosterone supports neuronal density, maintains spatial and verbal memory, and helps regulate mood, critical factors for keeping the mind active and alert. Gradual hormonal decline with age can explain reduced sexual desire, forgetfulness, and a sense of mental sluggishness. For Mr. Julian, this understanding was liberating. His experience was not weakness, nor inevitable decline, but a natural biological process that could be managed and improved with proper habits, cognitive exercises, and, when necessary, medical oversight. His case illustrates the deep connection between sexuality and brain function. Sexual stimulation and orgasm are far from purely physical. They trigger a cascade of chemical reactions that maintain brain activity, promote neuroplasticity, and enhance the brain's ability to adapt and learn throughout life. The hormonal and neurotransmitter interactions also directly affect memory, focus, and emotional stability. Studies show that men who maintain active sexual lives enjoy lower risks of cognitive decline and a steadier emotional state. For Mr. Julian, understanding this connection transformed his perspective on aging, sexuality, and mental vitality, empowering him to embrace both life and desire with renewed clarity and energy. From that pivotal moment, Mr. Julian committed to weaving into his daily life a series of activities that nourished both body and mind, exercises that enhanced circulation and muscle tone, relaxation and meditation practices to lower stress, careful attention to diet and rest, essential pillars for optimal hormone balance. He also embraced mental stimulation, returning to reading, strategy games, and reflective writing, habits that sharpen memory and cognitive focus. This holistic approach, combining physical, intellectual, and sexual practices, allowed him to reconnect with his body and mind, rebuild self-esteem, and reduce anxiety about the inevitable changes of aging. His story shows that age is not an absolute barrier, but a stage where awareness, knowledge, and conscious effort can generate a life surprisingly rich in quality and vitality. Mr. Julian's experience invites reflection on the inseparability of pleasure and brain care. Understanding that hormones and neural function are intertwined dismantles the myths surrounding unavoidable cognitive decline, showing that sexuality is not a frivolity, but a central element of health. Approaching sexual life as integral to overall well-being enables older men to preserve memory, mental clarity, emotional stability, and a profound sense of life satisfaction. In this light, Mr. Julian's journey becomes an inspiring testament to how information, prevention, and the conscious integration of body and mind can transform aging, demonstrating that curiosity, learning, and pleasure remain vital forces at any age. Pleasure in the male body is not limited to tactile sensation. It is intimately linked with brain neurochemistry, particularly neurotransmitters like dopamine and oxytocin. Dopamine, the motivation and reward neurotransmitter, activates whenever the brain anticipates or experiences pleasure, sexual, emotional, or even through personal achievement, generating feelings of satisfaction, well-being, and reinforcing memory, focus, and learning capacity. Oxytocin, often called the hugging hormone, is released during intimacy and close physical contact, fostering trust, emotional connection, and reducing stress. The interplay of these chemicals keeps the brain active, responsive, and healthy, especially in later life when external stimulation may decline. Recent studies show that older men who maintain consistent, healthy sexual activity sustain balanced levels of dopamine and oxytocin, enhancing cognitive function, emotional resilience, and overall vitality. These neurochemical releases do more than produce temporary pleasure. They act as biological reinforcement, motivating the body to stay alert, improving circulation, muscle tone, and mental energy. Sexual activity also stimulates endorphins, the body's natural painkillers, which help combat anxiety, fatigue, and physical discomfort. Maintaining an active sexual life in maturity is therefore not a luxury, but a fundamental aspect of well-being, vital for preventing physical and cognitive decline. Moreover, the neurochemistry of pleasure strengthens resilience against stress and depression. Dopamine and oxytocin enhance memory, concentration, and emotional regulation, helping men face the challenges of aging with calmness and clarity. Sexual intimacy, combined with affection and communication, becomes a natural mechanism to protect mental health, boost self-esteem, and reinforce emotional bonds, directly influencing quality of life. For men who have long believed that desire fades with age, these findings serve as a powerful call to rethink cultural perceptions of male sexuality, recognizing it as a cornerstone of vitality, fulfillment, and enduring well-being. Understanding these chemical processes empowers older men to reconnect with their bodies consciously, recognizing that pleasure is not a fleeting indulgence or an isolated act, but a powerful biological mechanism that nourishes both brain and body simultaneously. Incorporating practices that promote the release of dopamine and oxytocin through sexual activity, affectionate touch, laughter, or engaging in meaningful and satisfying experiences is essential for sustaining overall balance. In this way, the neurochemistry of pleasure enhances not only sexual life, but also memory, mental sharpness, and emotional vitality, creating a virtuous cycle where body and mind mutually support and amplify one another. Recognizing the role of dopamine and oxytocin in mental vigor also helps dismantle taboos and myths surrounding male sexuality in later life. Pleasure is not a minor or frivolous aspect of existence. It is a crucial ally for overall health, capable of preventing isolation, apathy, and cognitive decline. Awareness of these neurochemical mechanisms allows older men to embrace desire, enjoy intimacy, and maintain an active, fulfilling relationship with both body and mind. The neurochemistry of pleasure not only explains the sensations we experience, but also provides practical tools to enhance life quality and longevity, highlighting the inseparable link between physical and mental well-being and the experience of enjoyment. A decline in sexual stimulation during maturity impacts more than intimate life. It has direct consequences on cognitive and emotional health. When arousal frequency or intensity diminishes, the brain receives fewer reward and pleasure signals, leading to reduced release of neurotransmitters such as dopamine and oxytocin. This deficit can produce apathy, lower motivation, and diminished focus, affecting daily routines and social interactions. Without regular stimulation, the brain loses opportunities to reinforce neural networks that sustain memory and mental agility, a process that, over time, may accelerate cognitive decline and compromise the independence of older men. The loss of sexual stimulation also affects mood and self-perception. Many men experience frustration, reduced self-esteem, or a sense of premature aging when sexual desire declines. These emotions are not purely psychological, they carry a physical component, as the brain interprets reduced pleasure as a signal of diminished vitality and overall well-being. Moreover, the lack of sexual activity often triggers a vicious cycle. Decreased arousal reduces motivation for intimacy, which further limits brain stimulation and the release of pleasure-related hormones. This demonstrates that male sexuality is not a superficial luxury, but a vital factor in preserving cognitive function and mental health. Recent research shows that men who maintain regular sexual activity face a lower risk of cognitive decline, perform better on memory assessments, and exhibit greater emotional stability. Sexual stimulation acts as exercise for the brain, strengthening neural pathways linked to reward, focus, and emotional regulation. Desire also keeps hormone production active, particularly testosterone, which is critical for motivation, mood, and physical energy. When these stimuli wane, it is not only sexual pleasure that suffers, but also neurological and endocrine systems essential for holistic male health. Reduced sexual stimulation can also foster social isolation. Lack of intimacy deprives the body of pleasure and limits emotional connection with others, increasing loneliness, vulnerability to stress, and susceptibility to anxiety. This combination can contribute to depression and a decline in overall quality of life, demonstrating that the impact extends far beyond the sexual domain. Maintaining an active sexual life, even if frequency or intensity changes, is therefore a vital component for preserving mental agility, daily motivation, and emotional well-being, revealing that pleasure in later life is a subtle yet powerful ally of holistic health. Understanding the consequences of reduced sexual stimulation invites a complete reevaluation of cultural perceptions around aging and male sexuality. Pleasure is not merely about satisfying desire, it is a fundamental mechanism for preserving brain function, reinforcing memory, supporting learning capacity, and maintaining emotional equilibrium. Integrating sexual expression into daily care for body and mind helps prevent apathy, depression, and social isolation, ensuring that men can approach maturity with energy, confidence, and a sense of vitality. Recognizing the essential role of sexual stimulation encourages older men to reconnect with desire, explore new ways of intimacy, and embrace pleasure as a tool for sustaining cognitive and emotional health. Acknowledging that body and mind are inseparably connected and that every experience of enjoyment contributes to holistic well-being. Mr. Miguel, 66, had always led an active life, with daily walks and rich social engagement. Yet as he entered this stage of life, he began noticing a subtle emptiness that left him feeling disconnected from his environment. His friends remarked on his quieter demeanor, less engagement, and he himself felt a persistent, diffuse sadness he could not explain. This invisible depression unfolded quietly, without dramatic symptoms, slipping under the radar even during routine medical checkups. Early signs included loss of interest in previously enjoyable activities, decreased libido, and emotional withdrawal from his partner, subtle signals of emotional deterioration often overlooked in older age. Mr. Miguel's story highlights that depression in older men often does not manifest with visible tears or complaints. It can appear as apathy, irritability, or constant fatigue. Men frequently internalize these changes, attributing mood shifts to aging, diminished strength, or daily monotony, without connecting them to an underlying mental imbalance requiring attention. This so-called invisible depression directly affects quality of life, exacerbating physical and cognitive health issues by reducing motivation to exercise, socialize, or maintain proper nutrition and sleep. In Mr. Miguel's experience, invisible depression was tightly linked to decreased sexual stimulation and a sense of disconnection from his own body. Reduced desire and sexual activity not only eroded self-esteem, but also disrupted hormone production and the release of neurotransmitters, such as serotonin and dopamine, creating a vicious cycle where the absence of pleasure deepened sadness and apathy, while depression further diminished motivation to pursue intimacy or rewarding experiences. This interplay between mind and body makes clear that depression in later life is not merely psychological, but a complex phenomenon requiring an integrated approach. Recent research confirms that this condition is common among older men yet often underdiagnosed, partly due to cultural stigma that equates seeking help with weakness. Mr. Miguel's case exemplifies how invisible depression can coexist with daily life unnoticed, subtly undermining relationships, sexual desire, and the ability to enjoy previously pleasurable moments. Recognizing these subtle warning signs is essential for early intervention and effective emotional and therapeutic support, combining medical guidance, psychological counseling, and the promotion of healthy lifestyle habits. Mr. Miguel embarked on a journey of reconnection through therapy, regular physical activity, and the gradual restoration of social and intimate engagement. His experience demonstrates that invisible depression is not irreversible, but it requires men to acknowledge the importance of their emotional health and to seek support without shame. His story challenges cultural assumptions about aging, reminding us that persistent sadness, apathy, or loss of interest should never be normalized as an inevitable part of growing older, but addressed with the same seriousness as any physical ailment. A comprehensive approach that integrates mind, body, and social life can restore vitality, improve cognitive and emotional resilience, and recover the sense of pleasure and enjoyment that seemed lost, proving that aging can remain a fulfilling, conscious, and enriching stage of life when the invisible challenges of time are met with understanding and care. Invisible depression in later life, as seen in Mr. Miguel's experience, reminds us that older men require a holistic approach to health, one where sexuality, emotional well-being, and a conscious connection with the body are understood as deeply intertwined elements. His story underscores the importance of breaking cultural silences and taboos that discourage discussions about emotions, desire, or sadness, showing that acknowledging vulnerability does not diminish dignity, but rather opens the door to fuller, more humane care. Recognizing and addressing these subtle symptoms allows men not only to regain joy and a zest for life, but also to strengthen both physical and mental health, ensuring that aging is experienced with energy, balance, and genuine satisfaction, charting a path toward a vibrant and meaningful life. Mr. Arturo, a man who had always seen himself as energetic, disciplined, and health-conscious, noticed upon entering his 60s that sleep no longer offered the deep restoration it once had. Nights became shorter, more fragmented, and despite completing the required hours, he woke fatigued, with difficulty concentrating throughout the day. This subtle yet powerful shift, often dismissed as a normal part of aging, was closely linked to a decline in sexual activity and orgasm frequency. In Mr. Arturo's case, the connection between restful sleep and sexual function became evident as patterns emerged showing how intimacy and orgasm directly influenced physical and mental well-being. Science confirms that regular sexual activity and orgasms stimulate the release of hormones such as prolactin and oxytocin, which in turn promote deeper, more restorative, and balanced sleep. Examining Mr. Arturo's routine revealed that nights marked by higher sexual activity were consistently followed by better recovery during sleep. Orgasms, even in later life, encouraged muscle relaxation, relieved accumulated stress, and reinforced the circadian rhythm. Conversely, extended periods of sexual inactivity, often assumed to be a normal consequence of aging, coincided with fragmented sleep, daytime drowsiness, and diminished concentration. This correlation demonstrates that sexual pleasure is far from a mere luxury. It is an essential element of overall health, directly influencing energy, mental clarity, and emotional resilience. Mr. Arturo's experience also highlighted how external pressures, work demands, family responsibilities, and the fast pace of daily life can interfere with both rest and intimacy, creating a self-reinforcing cycle. Poor sleep reduces libido, while reduced sexual activity further undermines sleep quality. The mind-body connection is profound, and in older men, it becomes increasingly apparent as the natural physiological changes of age can magnify the effects of chronic sleep deprivation or unhealthy routines. Orgasm, far from being a superficial act of pleasure, reveals itself as a biological mechanism promoting physical regeneration, emotional equilibrium, and cognitive strength. When Mr. Arturo adopted a comprehensive plan combining sufficient restorative sleep, pre-bed relaxation, and renewed attention to active sexuality, he experienced remarkable improvements. He awoke refreshed, mental clarity and memory sharpened, and mood stabilized, illustrating how synchronizing sleep and sexual pleasure can restore vitality once thought lost. His story demonstrates that for the mature man, caring for orgasmic function and restorative rest is not merely a matter of desire, but a crucial strategy for holistic health, preserving daily energy, fortifying the mind, and sustaining physical and emotional independence. Mr. Arturo's journey encourages a deep reconsideration of cultural stereotypes surrounding aging, challenging the widespread belief that intimacy and pleasure lose significance as men grow older. His story illustrates that the decline in restorative sleep and sexual function is not inevitable, and that through conscious habits, attentive self-care, and understanding one's own body, it is entirely possible to maintain a rich, fulfilling, and satisfying life rhythm. Recognizing the powerful relationship between orgasm and restorative rest enables older men to reclaim control over their vitality, self-esteem, and overall sense of well-being, reinforcing not only the body, but also the mind and emotional connection with themselves and their partners. Mr. Arturo's experience reminds us that the health of mature men is holistic and that every aspect of life, from sexuality to sleep quality, interacts to influence the other. Grasping this interdependence is crucial for living later years with energy, clarity, and genuine satisfaction, ensuring that aging is not merely a period of decline, but an opportunity to experience fulfillment, self-care, and a profound connection with one's body and its needs. Recognizing and valuing the function of orgasm within this framework is essential for promoting comprehensive health and a life abundant with experiences, pleasure, and sustained vitality. Mr. Carlos, a 70-year-old man, had led an active lifestyle, including daily walks and moderate strength exercises, yet he began noticing subtle changes that affected his independence and confidence. Initially, these changes appeared minor: slight urinary leakage when laughing, decreased intensity during certain exercises, and a newfound sense of pelvic weakness. What many men do not realize is that the male pelvic floor, a muscular network supporting the bladder, intestines, and prostate, plays a critical role in mobility, strength, and physical autonomy. And its weakening can influence not only sexual health, but overall quality of life. For Mr. Carlos, recognizing these early signs was crucial for maintaining independence and preventing more serious complications. As he became more attuned to his body, Mr. Carlos discovered that targeted pelvic floor exercises could dramatically improve urinary control and physical endurance. Regular practice of controlled muscle contractions and relaxations, combined with breathing techniques and heightened body awareness, restored tone and elasticity, enhancing posture, walking stability, and the ability to perform daily activities such as lifting or climbing stairs. These improvements carried profound psychological benefits. Each gain in control reinforced self-esteem and confidence, a powerful reminder that age is not an absolute barrier to independence. Mr. Carlos's experience also revealed the direct impact of the pelvic floor on sexual health in mature men. Muscle strength and tone in this region influence erection, ejaculation, and sexual pleasure, and training these muscles can extend sexual activity while enhancing intensity and satisfaction. The intricate connection between muscle function, blood flow, and nervous response shows that a well-conditioned pelvic floor is fundamental for an active, fulfilling sexual life in later years, and neglecting it can lead to insecurity, anxiety, and withdrawal from intimacy. Mr. Carlos came to understand that caring for this area is neither a luxury nor an exclusively youthful concern, but an essential act of self-care with effects that ripple through every aspect of life. His experience demonstrates that rehabilitating the male pelvic floor demands consistency and mindful awareness of the body, and that even gradual results can be extraordinarily impactful. Strengthened muscles translate into improved walking stability, lower risk of falls, better posture, faster recovery after exertion, and enhanced bladder and bowel control, reducing reliance on external aids and promoting daily independence. This case powerfully illustrates that attention to internal muscles can distinguish an active, empowered old age from one overshadowed by limitations and frustration. Beyond the obvious physical improvements, Mr. Carlos experienced a profound shift in how he perceived aging. He realized that preserving independence was not solely dependent on general strength or cardiovascular health, but also on attending to the often overlooked details of the body, like the pelvic musculature. His journey underscores that informed self-care, disciplined practice of targeted exercises, and a conscious connection with one's own body empower older men to live with autonomy, confidence, and fulfillment, directly challenging the entrenched belief that functional decline is inevitable. Mr. Carlos's example highlights that the male pelvic floor is far more than a discrete anatomical feature. It is a cornerstone of physical freedom, sexual vitality, and personal dignity. By incorporating strengthening exercises into daily life and maintaining awareness of this region, men can prevent future health problems, enhance quality of life, and ensure that aging is experienced with independence and vigor. His story invites all men to look beyond the limitations of age, to appreciate the importance of every muscle, and to recognize the intimate connection between internal strength, overall well-being, and prolonged autonomy, reminding us that caring for the body is, ultimately, caring for one's freedom and the ability to fully embrace life. Mr. Joaquin, a 75-year-old man, had lived for decades under the belief that advancing years required surrendering certain pleasures and distancing oneself from the intimate connection with one's own body. His days were consumed by family and professional duties that kept him occupied, yet gradually distanced him from self-awareness and from attending to his physical and emotional health. Over time, he noticed that this detachment affected not only his energy and strength, but also his self-esteem, vitality, and capacity to enjoy life fully. Recognizing the loss of connection with his own bodily identity marked the first step in a profound journey of reconnection, a process that would transform his perspective on aging, pleasure, and sexuality. Mr. Joaquin's path began with small, deliberate acts of body awareness. Learning proper breathing techniques, identifying accumulated tension, and dedicating time to gentle, mindful movements allowed him to rediscover sensations long forgotten, reconnecting with the musculature that underpins daily well-being. Each stretch, deep breath, and moment of mindfulness not only strengthened his body, but nourished his mind and spirit, demonstrating that the relationship with one's body is inseparable from identity and self-confidence, and that reclaiming this connection is essential for living later years with dignity and joy. He also confronted the emotional dimension of reconnection. For years, he had suppressed desires, ignored signals of pleasure, and neglected physical intimacy, considering them secondary or inappropriate for his age. By acknowledging and accepting his needs and emotions, he understood that mature sexuality is not only possible, but vital for sustaining mental vitality, emotional stability, and a genuine sense of fulfillment. This realization allowed him to reconcile with his body, release accumulated tension, and cultivate a more compassionate, respectful internal dialogue, understanding that self-care and enjoyment are inseparable expressions of personal identity. The process extended into the social and affective sphere. Mr. Joaquin recognized that sharing moments of closeness, affection, and conversation nurtured relationships while reinforcing his sense of identity and belonging. Human connection, combined with mindful body awareness, fostered security, self-esteem, and resilience, equipping him to face the challenges of advanced age with confidence. This integration of body, mind, and emotion revealed that mature masculine identity is forged through acceptance, care, and self-value, rather than isolation or denial of natural desires. Finally, Mr. Joaquin came to understand that old age offers a unique and precious opportunity to deepen self-awareness. Through reconnecting with his body, his senses, and his emotions, he rediscovered not only the capacity to experience pleasure and genuine well-being, but also the inner resilience that allows him to live authentically, autonomously, and with purpose. His journey shows that maturity is not about renunciation, but integration, that masculine identity is enriched by acknowledging the significance of every muscle, every impulse, and every feeling. And that conscious care of the body is a gateway to freedom, dignity, and fulfillment across all dimensions of life. The lessons drawn from exploring sexuality and male identity in later years lead to a powerful truth. Old age is not a time of inevitable loss, but a stage brimming with possibilities for self-knowledge, holistic health, and authentic dignity. The body of an older man, with its physical transformations, hormonal shifts, and accumulated experience, remains a fertile terrain for pleasure, emotional connection, and personal satisfaction. Embracing this reality challenges the deep-rooted cultural taboos that have long dictated that withdrawing from desire or neglecting sexual needs is a sign of mature behavior. True masculine dignity is strengthened when a man accepts his body as it is and actively engages in cultivating a full, conscious, and healthy life. Self-knowledge becomes the central axis of holistic health and maturity. Understanding the intricate interplay of body, mind, and emotions opens pathways for reflection, acceptance, and the intelligent adaptation of limitations, while highlighting the strengths that remain or even flourish through conscious practice and accumulated experience. This awareness enables men to make informed decisions about their physical, sexual, and emotional well-being, integrating habits that enhance vitality, strength, and mental clarity. By taking an active role in their own care, men not only protect themselves from illness, but reinforce their sense of self-worth, identity, and personal power. Holistic health in later life extends far beyond the physical body. It encompasses emotional, social, and cognitive dimensions. Maintaining strong affective bonds, savoring intimacy and pleasure, and pursuing stimulating mental activities are fundamental to aging with fulfillment. When these dimensions are harmonized with mindful self-care, adapted physical exercise, balanced nutrition, and restorative rest, the result is a framework in which pleasure and vitality do not fade with time, but transform into conscious, sustainable, and deeply enriching experiences. Sexuality, far from being a luxury or taboo, becomes a clear indicator of overall health and well-being. Reflecting on the lives of men like Mr. Roberto, Mr. Fernando, Mr. Miguel, Mr. Arturo, Mr. Carlos, and Mr. Joaquin illustrates a common thread: resilience, adaptation, and continuous learning. Their experiences demonstrate that even amid hormonal changes, physical limitations, or cognitive challenges, dignity and autonomy remain attainable when the value of body awareness, emotional acceptance, and connection with one's desires and needs is acknowledged. Aging, then, is not defined by the absence of pleasure, but by the ability to integrate experience, awareness, and responsibility toward oneself in a balanced, intentional, and enriching way. Ultimately, the message calls for a profound shift in how male aging is perceived culturally, personally, and socially. By dismantling myths, confronting silences, whether medical, social, or religious, and embracing sexuality and body care as essential aspects of well-being, older men can live with fuller vitality, deeper satisfaction, and renewed confidence. Dignity, Self-knowledge and holistic health emerge as inseparable pillars, revealing maturity not as decline, but as a stage of potential, exploration, and personal enrichment. The final invitation is clear. Every man, when he looks at himself, should recognize his inherent right to pleasure, connection, and vitality. Understanding that caring for body and mind is the truest expression of self-love and respect for the life that still lies ahead.